Hi, I'm Cameron with CanCam CNC, and this is going to be our video on aligning a Mira 9 laser. This is likely going to be our first video in a series of videos with this specific laser and a bunch of tricks and things we can do with it. Our goal for this video is to make it the easiest and fastest alignment that you can do to get your machine up and running as fast as possible. So just a quick summary of what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to start off with some disclaimers. We're going to go through all of the tools that you'll need, which are very few. We're going to do a quick tour of the machine and the locations and terms that we're going to use for everything. And then we're going to go through some tests to make sure you actually align what you only need to align. And then we're going to go into the actual alignment, starting at the back, working our way through all of the mirrors to the front, and making sure that our alignment is good at the end. So just going through the disclaimers first. Your Mira 9, Mira 7, similar Mira may be different from the one seen in the video. There may be slightly different equipment added into the machine, so just be aware of that throughout this video. Next, of course, safety. We really want to highlight safety items such as wearing your glasses when firing the laser, having a fire extinguisher nearby, watching out for pinches and burns and small things like that. On top of that, before aligning your laser, you're going to want to make sure that your bed is level and your laser head is squared up. And then on top of that, you have making sure that you're selecting the correct mirror to align that you only need to align. So you're not going back all the way to the tube if you don't need to. So looking at our tools here, we have our Allen keys. We have a Phillips screwdriver, a permanent marker, a roll of green painter's tape, and a triangle key to open up the panels. So before you go and do any laser pulses, we're going to make sure that we layer our tape properly, so at least 4 pieces of tape layered, and then you're actually going to have to change the settings or verify the settings in your controller to make sure that your laser pulse isn't too powerful that it's going to start a fire on the tape. So at our main menu here, we're going to verify our max power by pressing maximum power. And you can see we have 40% and 80%. We're just going to change those both to between 30 and 40. So the first one's good. And we're going to go down and change this one just in case to 40 or approximately 30%. And you hit enter and it saves it. All right, so before you start tearing your machine apart, let's make sure you only need to open up the certain panels that you need to open. So we're gonna do a 4-corner laser test. We got 4 layers of tape here, just a small square. We're gonna place this over the laser head where the laser would come in. Just make sure it's stuck fairly securely. And we're going to do a laser pulse in each corner. With the tape over the laser head, we're going to move it to the back right corner. This is where we would do 1 pulse, and then we're going to move it to the very other back corner, do another laser pulse. At this point, you can check it and see how those align if you'd like by just bringing it out to the middle, taking a look. Next, after the second corner, you go to the front left corner, do a laser pulse, and then to the last corner, front right, and do your final laser pulse. After that, you check to see how the dots came out, and that'll help guide you in what meters you need to adjust. So going to the back corner to do 1 pulse, going to the other corner, doing another pulse. I'm going to bring it to the middle, take a quick look, see what kind of shape I have, and we'll explain those later. And then I'm going to go to the other front corner now I'm gonna do a pulse after I close the door here. And then I'm gonna move it to the other front corner here and do the final pulse. And then move it to the middle of the bed. And this is where I would take a look and see what my results look like. This one here is an example of pretty much perfect alignment. So as you just seen with our test there, we had perfect alignment, which is basically a perfect circle. And what that likely means is that you won't have to open up any of the side or back panels to adjust any of those mirrors. All of those adjustments would be done at the laser head to fix that alignment. If you are noticing something that looks like a number 8, where there's multiple beams being fired, maybe it looks more like an egg shape, that's when you might have to open up one of the side panels, maybe even more. And if you're seeing maybe even 4 beams pop up, then you're probably gonna have to go back further, even towards the laser tube or one of the back mirrors. Which next we're gonna actually show you how to open up your machine and go through what all of the mirrors mean. All right, we're back at the back of the machine here, and we're gonna open up the laser door. So you would unlock this one, and there's one on the other side here that you would unlock, and then it tips up, and you have your laser tube back here. So terms we might use would be the laser supports at the front of the tube. This is the front, and then the laser support at the back of the tube on this side. These may be different depending on the year of your machine, but they work in a very similar way. So next we have our little square panel at the back here that you can remove with your Phillips head screwdriver. There's 4 bolts. And once you're on the last one, it should be able to pivot out of the way. And then if you want, you can even just leave that in there, tighten up that last one a little bit. And you can leave it like that if you'd like. In there, you have your first mirror. We call this mirror 1. And we have some adjustment knobs on it. And then opening up our next panel here, we're using our key, and the panel lifts out. There's some pins there that you have to watch out for. And this gives you access to your second mirror, mirror 2, and it also has 2 adjustment knobs. Okay, so along our gantry here, we have our laser head, and this is where you'll find mirror 3, which will be the final adjustments to make sure your beam travels through the nozzle. So the first step of aligning your laser right from the beginning, keep in mind you may not have to come back this far, is looking at the laser tube and squaring up and leveling that laser tube. Before even touching any of that, we're gonna start with a few layers of tape, and we're gonna place them over the holder here. We're not going to put it over the end of the tube because we don't want smoke to get on the tube lens. We're going to do a test fire here, and we'll check the results. So I've gone and taken my Sharpie and drawn a circle around the hole through that holder just to help us see where that laser beam lands. You can see that it's approximately centered, which doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but the more centered it is, the better the result you're gonna get. So here is a bad example where it's likely the laser beam is not going through and hitting the mirror because it's too close to the edge of this circle. Anything about this far from the center or even further where it hits the frame is going to give bad results in alignment. So we are going to have to adjust the tube to bring that closer to the middle. So to make sure that we know what tube support to adjust in what direction, we're gonna look at the general squareness of the tube. So you can do this just by eye. Just take a look make sure it looks generally the same angle as the frame and similar components in line with it. And then we're also just going to take a general look. You may have to squat down of the levelness of the tube compared to the components around it as well. And if you notice it's in a significant direction, maybe it's up on one end or down on one end, or maybe it's too far rotated clockwise or counterclockwise, that may be a sign that you need to bring it back into squareness, and that might actually line up with fixing your beam landing zone on the holder here. So looking at the front of the tube here, if you wanted to adjust the left to right movement of it, or front to back you could say, you actually loosen, there's 4 of these bolts, 2 on this side, there's 1 at the back there, 1 at the front, and then the other side as well. You loosen all 4 of those and don't completely remove them. You would just loosen them, and then that gives you movement to this holder to move forwards and backwards. Now, if you wanted to adjust the height up and down of this end of the tube, that's when you take an Allen key to the bolts on the side. So there's 1 here, and there's 1 at the back, and then on the other side there's exactly the same ones. And you would loosen the 4 of those, and then there's a dial at the very bottom center in there that you turn, and it will raise this stand up or it'll lower the stand. Now that we know how to do those adjustments, looking at this, I know I want to move the front of the tube to the right and a little bit down, bring that level of the tube down on the front here. And I would do that by adjusting the stand at the front, and depending on how the pulse reacts, because we're going to do a small adjustment, we're going to do a pulse, check to see if it's in the middle, do another small adjustment, check the pulse, and we just keep checking that. We may have to replace the tape a few times, and eventually once it's in the middle of this opening, then we should be good to go and we can tighten everything back up. All right, so we've done a few tests. We've gone through quite a few pieces of tape and made a few small adjustments to the tube to get that beam right in the center of the hole in this bracket right here. So now that's centered in there, we can move on to the other side of our mirror here. So we're at mirror 1 here at the back of the machine. We have 2 knobs. The one on the right side is going to be your right and left adjustments, and the one at the bottom is going to be your up and down adjustments. So to align your mirror 1 at the back of the machine, you actually have to go to the second mirror, mirror 2, and this is where you'd actually place your tape on the front of this, and you should see the red dot pop up on that. So a quick disclaimer regarding the red dot is that it's not actually part of the beam path that comes out of the tube. It's a completely separate entity. So that means you don't necessarily want your beam to be exactly with the red dot when you're trying to align it, but we're going to use that red dot as a reference of if we move the red dot up, the beam is going to move up at the same time. So again, they don't need to overlap, but we're gonna watch them and see which way they travel to make our adjustments. To align mirror 1 at the back, we're going to move the gantry to the back. We're gonna do a laser pulse. The laser beam is gonna hit that piece of tape. We're gonna move the gantry to the front of the machine. We're gonna take a glance at the tape. We're gonna analyze that beam and see where it is landing on the tape, and we're going to try and memorize that, and then we're going to do our second pulse now that the gantry is at the front, and then we're going to check both pulses and see where they line up with each other. So here's two beams landing in the exact same spot. This is perfect alignment for mirror 1. You can see we did have a small fire on the second beam shot. So that means I didn't put enough layers of tape, and all you have to do if you notice it quickly is just quickly blow it out. And that's important to go over and check your tape after every pulse to make sure it doesn't continue to burn. So here's an example of moderately bad alignment. The farther these two dots are away means the worse your alignment is. You can see our first one was actually this bottom one, and then our second beam fire with mirror 2 at the front of the machine actually landed up higher and to the left. So our goal now is to go back to mirror 1, and we're going to adjust that mirror by bringing the second fired dot towards the first dot. So that means we're gonna adjust the knobs and bring that red dot as a guidance to the right, about that distance between them, left and right. And then we're gonna bring the red dot down that similar distance between the two dots. And again, that red dot is just guidance. It doesn't have to land anywhere exactly on the dot. All of our mirror holders have a locking nut on them. Those may be locked in place, so you will have to loosen them. And once they're loosened, then you have free control over each of these knobs. And we want to bring our second dot to the right. So we're actually going to turn this knob on the right side here counterclockwise, and that's going to move the red dot to the right a little bit. And then we also want to bring it down. So to adjust down, we're going to use our bottom knob here, and to bring it down, we're also going to turn it counterclockwise. And we're going to watch the red dot travel as we adjust those to make sure it's the right distance. So as I'm adjusting one of the knobs here to bring that red dot down, you can see it's traveling slowly down, and then I might do a test as it is now. All right, so I've put a fresh piece of layered tape on the mirror, and I'm gonna do another pulse test at the back and the front to verify if my changes have worked to bring that mirror in line. So here you can see we have two dots, and it looks like the height is actually really good now. So I'm happy with the height. I'm probably going to lock that in, and then all I need to adjust is the left to right, and I know that my second beam hit further to the left. So I'm going to move that second beam, watching the red dot, I'm going to pull it very minorly to the right, and then we'll do our last test and we'll see how it turns out. So we just did another test after adjusting the left to right on this on mirror 1, and you can see our front to back test, the pulse is perfectly circular, so our alignment front to back is now perfect. This is where you do want to make sure you go and lock in your locking nuts at mirror 1 at the back, and maybe do one more test to make sure you didn't accidentally turn one of the knobs when you're locking that in. Sometimes those small adjustments to locking them in can actually mess up your alignment. So moving on to mirror 2 in the side here, to align that one, we actually have to put our tape over mirror 3. And this is where we're going to check our pulse marks. So we're going to do a similar system as before. We're going to do a pulse in 2 locations, making sure that the gantry is approximately in the middle, front to back. And then we're going to do our first pulse closest to mirror 2 there. And then after that pulse, we're going to go all the way across the bed to the other side And this is where we do our second pulse. So this one didn't turn out perfect. You can actually see the first beam fired at the top right here, and then the second beam fired a little lower and to the left. So we're gonna have to bring that second beam to the right and up to match that first beam. So to make our adjustments at mirror 2, we need to adjust the second beam by moving it to the right. So we're going to unlock this one and turn the knob clockwise, and that'll move the beam to the right. And we're gonna watch the red dot as we do that. And then to adjust to bring that beam up, we're going to turn this top one, we're gonna unlock it and turn it counterclockwise, and that should move the beam up to make it perfectly in line. So we've made our adjustments at mirror 2 there, and we're just gonna do another check here. So putting some more tape on, running it left, gonna do a pulse, and then running it all the way to the right, doing another pulse, and then let's check the results. And we're pretty close to perfect there. That is about 95% perfect, which is really good enough for really good results out of this laser. So we're at mirror 3 here, right on top of the laser head, and we're going to check the alignment of the laser going through the nozzle. Our goal is just to get that laser beam through the nozzle so it reaches the material. So we're gonna start with a small square of 1 layer of tape, and that's gonna go directly over the end of our laser nozzle. Make sure it's on there fairly well. We're gonna take our Sharpie now, and we're going to put a small dot at the front of that nozzle so that we can use that as a guide later when we remove the nozzle. All right, so we've placed the tape over our nozzle. We've dotted the front with the permanent marker, and we are going to fire a laser pulse through now. Just a very quick one. And then we're gonna check it. So keeping the tape on the nozzle and trying not to move it around, we're going to find that black dot. We're gonna aim that towards us, and then we're gonna look through the nozzle and verify if it is going through perfectly or not. So I've just gone and messed up the mirror 3 alignment purposely by turning the knobs to make sure that is pretty bad. So I'm expecting it to almost not go through the nozzle at all. And I'm just gonna check that now so I can walk you through how to bring it back. So I've got another small piece of tape on there. I'm going to install it. And then I'm gonna grab my Sharpie. Same thing, dot at the front. Close the glass. And we'll do a laser pulse. And then let's verify it. So finding that black mark on there, we're gonna look through it, and maybe a quarter of the beam is going through right now. So we have, about a quarter of the power of the laser going through right now. We definitely want more than that. We're missing about 75% of that beam going through the nozzle. It's bouncing around inside, and it's just a waste of power. So it's even possible that the entire beam could be hitting somewhere inside the nozzle and bouncing through. So now we're going to show you how to kind of bring that back into the middle of your nozzle and approximate your beam path, so that is perfect. So a good trick to see like if your beam is completely out of alignment in the nozzle where it's just bouncing off and not even going through is to adjust your knobs pretty drastically so that you get to a point where you can see the red dot show up through the nozzle. So you can see there, the red dot isn't anywhere, but I've just found it. By turning this knob clockwise, it's actually come through the nozzle. So there, now I know I've gotten to a point where I'm close to good alignment. So I might adjust that a little bit more and then do some tests and see where it lands. So I'm gonna do a test after getting that red dot through the nozzle. I'm gonna get a small piece of tape and put that on the nozzle, install it back on, and now I will do a pulse. And you can see the beam actually went right through. Let's remember to add a little dot, and then we'll take the nozzle off and check how close we got it. So we actually got pretty lucky there, and it is going right through. So I'm actually struggling here to get this out of perfect alignment through the nozzle. We got really lucky with some of the adjustments and it's going perfectly through. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. So I'm gonna try and mess it up a little bit more. And we're gonna do another pulse. And hopefully then we can describe how to move that Mira 3 to bring that dot to the middle of the nozzle. So coming down, we're gonna do another pulse. And then we're gonna check it. And there, here we have a good example. So we can see the hole is not perfectly circular. It is hitting the side of the nozzle there just a little bit, but it looks like the up down is pretty good. So looking at our Mira 3 housing here, we have a little bit different of a setup compared to the previous housings that you saw. This one's going to be more similar to the newer housings that are coming out right now, where this knob here is actually going to adjust based off of the bolt directly beside it. So it'll pivot front to back, and then this bolt at the bottom here is going to pivot based off of this bolt here, so that would be your left to right tilt. So looking at our nozzle there, we have the dot was off to the left. So we need to bring that dot to the right. So we're going to use our red dot light below as a point of reference, and we're going to adjust the Mira to move that red dot to the right. So I'm going to turn this one, a right to left adjustment, clockwise, and that'll push the red dot very slightly to the right. And then we're going to check our results and see if we're good. All right, so our test here, we got one small piece of tape, again, and our permanent marker. And we'll do a pulse. And let's check it out. So finding our spot there, we're going to tilt it back, and we can see it's not quite perfect, we might have to adjust that a little bit, but the beam is completely going through, so this is definitely good enough. So we've just finished up at the Mira 3 housing here, and I'm gonna lock in where it was because I was really happy with the beam traveling through the nozzle. And the beam traveling through the nozzle actually means we've achieved our goal from the beginning. So we have good alignment, it's going through the nozzle, it's gonna hit the material, 100% of the beam is gonna hit the material, it's gonna be good for engraving, it's gonna be good for cutting. So that's it for our alignment. It is good to go. If you have any questions regarding alignment, or maybe there's further steps you'd like to see, just let us know. We are working on a few other things like a focal height video to adjust your focal height and make sure that's perfect. And we have a few other things on the way too. All right, so thank you for joining us for our Mira alignment video. If you need any help with anything, you have any questions, issues, or you need any parts, you can contact us at support@cancam.ca and we'd be happy to help you out.